Welcome, everybody, to the Paleoconnection. By now, I'm sure you've all heard the historic news. No, COVID-19 hasn't been cured. Elon Musk hasn't yet made it to Mars, nor has Donald Trump conceded the election. I'm, of course, talking about a recent B-list celebrity changing their sex from a lesbian woman to a non-binary trans-masculine man. Yes, folks, this is 2020 and anything is possible, as the star of Umbrella Academy, Ellen Page, has become Elliot Page, and don't you dare say otherwise, or you are a transphobic filled with hate. The media was, of course, overjoyed with such an announcement, as it fits nicely into the current LGBTIQ++, up, down, left, right, BA start narrative. Her pronouns of choice will be he, they, and Ellen has become a dead name. So, Verv, how will you be referring to Miss Page?
Wow. You know, for a long time, there was the whole saga of Bradley Manning becoming Chelsea Manning. And I stuck with it for a while, just continuing with Bradley. But, you know, you can only sustain that so long until eventually you just start repeating whatever the media is saying. So I guess the contest will be to see how long I can keep up with Ellen before I inadvertently switch to Elliot. But, you know, I also got to say this. I don't watch the Umbrella Academy or whatever it is. And the amount of Ellen Page stuff I've seen was maybe 15 to 20 minutes of Juno in the year 2005 or whenever it came out. And then, you know, just clicking it off. I wasn't that interested in it. I haven't really thought about her that much, but I guess now, you know, we might have to think about her more as she becomes another face of this movement, right?
Yeah, of course. We're going to hear a lot more about, Elliot Page. I suspect that she's going to receive quite a few new roles within Hollywood, as of course I think they feel obliged now to give her roles. But it's kind of interesting how this all plays into the whole leftist idea that only homosexuals or gay people can play gay characters and straight people should play straight characters. This is kind of a newer thing that has in recent years kind of come to light, and you see a lot of talk about it on Twitter and on the internet. It's kind of interesting what's going to happen with Elliot Page. What roles will she be playing? And of course, we all know that this really only does swing one way, as gay people can, of course, play straight people because, they can understand how it is to be a straight person. But, straight people can definitely not play a gay person anymore, as they have no idea what it's like to be gay. So I'm interested, though, to see what roles he or she plays and what the media then says about it. Any thoughts on that?
They're going to basically have to invent roles for this. I can't think of any important story I'd like to hear about that has a special place for somebody who is, non-binary trans-masculine?
Yeah, that was the first time I heard it as well, so I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I think it just means it was a woman who was a lesbian who is now a man who likes women. Yeah.
I've seen the long lists of all the potential genders and gender identities out there before, but running your eyes over these different names doesn't really clarify anything. You just have to go off of what you imagine it means, and so far it just seems like it's a girl without makeup wearing a baseball hat.
Yeah, I've seen that picture too. She was quite a beautiful woman. so it's a bit of a shame in that regard. And I'm sure she's not going to make for the most handsome man, but, anything's possible with plastic surgery. So we'll see what happens. Another interesting thing is that, well, since she is becoming a man now and she is partnered with a woman, that technically does make her a straight white male. But
That's right.
she does seem to be hanging on to that queer tag, right? It's almost as if it gives her the street cred, right? Because she's not a regular straight white man. She's a straight white man who is queer, because she has, well, transitioned. I don't know if she's had any surgery done or anything, but at least in name and publicly she has transitioned. So she kind of gets the best of both worlds, right? She gets to be a part of that patriarchy club that we have, weekly meetings, where we like to subjugate women. So she gets to be part of that, but then she also gets to be part of that other group, the queer and homosexual group that is, severely downtrodden these days.
Yeah, you would never want to give up the title that lets you tick the boxes that open up doors, right? So when somebody transitions, it's never a goal to completely become that thing and to leave the past behind. Maybe it is the case for some people, but it seems that the main attraction is to get the attention and the cred of being one of these people who now live sort of on the edge of the cutting edge of modernity, and also on the edge of polite society in a way, to be a rebel. But what can we really say to criticize that? Because as a result of these changes, they obviously are going to get a lot more fame and attention.
Yeah, I was quite struck. I guess it shouldn't surprise me anymore, though, about the media attention that was received because of this. Some of the headlines were things like the ascent of Elliot Page. Another headline was, Elliot Page coming out is a historic moment for trans masculine visibility. And no, Elliot Page is not abandoning lesbians. This was really played off as some sort of, historic moment, something similar to, the months we had to deal with, what was his name? Caitlyn Jenner. What's her name? Caitlyn Jenner. When suddenly, Bruce Jenner transitioned to being Caitlyn Jenner, and it's literally all you heard about in the media for like 6 months. She was like on the cover of magazines and whatnot, and the media just fawned over Bruce Jenner, switching over to Caitlyn Jenner. So I have a feeling we're going to get something like this over the next half a year until perhaps the next big name transitions.
Right. It's the continuous revolution. We're gonna keep being subjected to every bit of news that has to deal with these things in order to make people convinced that this is a valid way of operating, right? Because most people aren't prepared for the idea that somebody can switch into another gender, and now we're dealing with this idea of being able to, what is the word for this? Kind of switch into another gender? Because it's not a full switch, right?
Well, yeah, I guess not. I guess since she's still considered queer, it's not full.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Non-binary trans mask, right?
Yeah. What are your thoughts about the, comeback that I hear a lot of people say regarding this story? And they say things like, why do you care, about what Elliot Page is, doing with her life? Or why do you care that she wants to be a man? What do you say to that type of criticism that comes from the left whenever someone on the right or a conservative says negative things or disapproves of this kind of story.
It's really disingenuous because these stories get thrown out there because they want to advance a narrative in the culture. They want to continue pushing forward with education that tries to tell everybody that you can choose not just your sexuality to be a certain way and to be fully accepted, but that you can also change your gender simply by stating it, and we all have to respect it. It's really fighting over control of the public narrative, but they act like, oh no, it's just a personal choice. It's this, what they say is the Mott and Bailey tactic, where the very first thing they throw out there, you give a response and they say, oh no, it's not that at all. We're not saying anything like that. This is just all has to do with their personal choice in everything. But then in every other circumstance, they advance it as this basically wedge issue to put forward increasingly radical stuff.
Yeah, it's literally impossible to not have this story put in front of you, right? Even if you don't watch, traditional news on television or read, newspapers, you're going to hear about this story through things like Facebook or Twitter or other types of social media. So it's going to be put in front of you by the media in some way. Therefore, your opinion on the matter sort of just comes out naturally, because it's what's in the news. It's what people are talking about. But the problem is, if your opinion about the issue is not, what the, leftist party line is saying, then of course you are a transphobic. So the left has done a really good job in recent years of making this issue of, trans and homosexuality, again, a sort of human rights issue, a moral issue where it is no longer possible for somebody to openly have at least reservations, at the very least, about this type of activity. Even saying something like, I don't want my kids being exposed to this in school, at such a young age, elementary school age, will get you blowback from leftists. They'll come back at you with something like, well, what's wrong with, teaching children about, loving everybody, and, what's wrong with exposing them to different, viewpoints and ideas, things like that. So it's sort of impossible to offer a different opinion, even though it is put in front of you, and impossible to, not see this.
Right. And so part of this whole exercise is to get as many people as possible used to affirming these things. They want you to use the pronouns. They want you to actively be saying, well, it's none of my business, at the least. Of course, they want you to affirm it, but when you're not affirming it, it's okay for them as long as you shut up and say nothing about it. This reminds me of the Solzhenitsyn essay, Live Not by Lies, that came out in 1974. I was just reading it today, actually, where he talks about how a lot of these lies can just sort of vanish if enough people don't accept them. And so one of the things that we have to do in the culture war is take a tactic that is frequently employed by the left and just never give an inch. There's no reason whatsoever that people who believe in the gender binary have to pretend that there are multiple flavors of gender. And there's no reason why we have to pretend that it's completely valid for somebody to totally change their gender that they've had from birth, and to say that people who undergo surgeries or other things can become the opposite gender. Now, we should still be polite and we should still be kind to others. So I understand those who, for the sake of, going along to get along, make concessions. So, for instance, using the name Elliot isn't, that big of a deal, really, being that there are people from different cultures who end up with feminine or masculine names. that you interact with. It's not that big of a deal. You can really just call people what they want. But the important point is that when the issue of transgenderism and gender identity come up, to never let yourself live by the lies that the enemy sets, to never let yourself be trapped into their ideological framework.
Yeah, those are some good points. I think all of the people that were originally against, gay marriage some 20 years ago or so, who said things like, this is a slippery slope that we do not want to start going down. Therefore, we should not allow gay marriage. I think all those people have long been validated by now, and that opinion turned out to be true. And we are certainly going down the slippery slope. We are definitely not at the bottom yet. I could think of a lot of other things that are worse than this. I think pedophilia being maybe the very bottom, but we seem to be heading down that way, and I don't see any stop in sight. Any final thoughts before we finish this one up on that, Verv?
Yeah, I guess my final thought on that is I remember when I must have been 12 or so, and my grandmother told this story about how when she was a little girl, her dad said, Elvis Presley on TV dancing in this way, shaking his hips in a way that's sexually suggestive, is the beginning of the end, and that because of this, all of society is going to fall apart. And my grandma said that she felt her father was way out of touch for, suggesting such a thing. But the rest of the story of her life from the, 1950s onward has been watching Western society moment by moment fall apart like that. Oddly enough, he was quite a liberal guy. One of my high school teachers touched on it and goes, the people used to joke that this was the beginning of the end when Elvis shook his hips on TV, and it all came true. What they said all came true. So the slippery slope, it is a logical fallacy, but it's a logical fallacy not because it doesn't happen exactly that way 99% of the time. It's because 1% of the time or 2% of the time or whatever, it doesn't. You can't assume that it'll always go that way. But I know that you've taught before, and that when you're in a classroom, it becomes very obvious that the slippery slope is very real when dealing with children, just as much as it is when dealing with culture. So yes, I fully agree that everyone who ever said that it doesn't end here has been fully vindicated today.
Very good points, and I think we'll just end with a quotation that I know you have heard, and that would be, history is only the pattern of silken slippers descending the stairs to thunder of hobnailed boots climbing upward from below. That is a quote from Voltaire. We will leave it at that.